Hey everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to begin our scholarly examination of Quack, the ground level comic from the 70s, published by Mike Friedrich's Star Reach Comics group. Here we have number 1, and this comic has a lot of nostalgia for me. It was one of the first independent comics I ever read. I think I was like, 10, 11, 12. I'm pretty sure my brother got this from Bud Plant. He was more adventurous. We were all reading superhero comics, but he would like get ElfQuest, try some other things. I think he got all the Von Baudet comics that I got turned on to. And this comic I loved. I think I probably sent in an order to Bud Plant to get it myself. So I've had these since I was a little kid. I always love these comics. It's a funny animal comic, if you can't tell by the title and the art. And I guess it was started because Frank Brunner, the great Marvel artist who, known for his Doctor Strange work, but also known for being the first artist on the Howard the Duck comic. And he only did it for a few issues and then kind of came into conflict with the powers that be at Marvel. And he didn't want to put up with their bullshit anymore, so he left pretty quickly. So there's only a handful of issues of Howard the Duck drawn by Frank Brunner. They're fucking gorgeous. They're beautiful. Of course, Gene Colan came on, and he's no slouch, so it's... luckily, they found Gene Colan, one of the few mainstream artists who probably could draw Howard the Duck well. So Frank Brunner kind of still liked this whole idea of this funny animal duck. He started making posters and prints of this one, for example, is the Duccaneer. And he was selling them through places like Bud Plant. He had a few other posters. And I guess Mike Friedrich, he saw the poster and said, hey, we should have a funny animal comic. And you could do a Duccaneer comic strip for it. And that's the genesis of this comic. I love this cover. Just beautiful stuff. It's a really good oil painting. Well, I think it's oil painting. I'm not an artist, but it's very beautiful. And I'm a sucker for any cover that does this. The golden age thing of having the little headshots. And here's some of the characters within. This came out in 1976. We have a little introduction from Frank Brunner. So even though he's not the editor, but he's kind of like almost the spiritual, editor emeritus of this comic. And here's a tiny little thing from Mike Friedrich. And we have a dedication to Jan Brunner, Frank Brunner's wife. I guess she made up the title, Quack, and helped with the cover coloring. Why I'm pointing this out is because she's the cutest woman I've ever seen in my life. I think I'm in love with her. With a 60-year-old picture of Jan Brunner. She's so cute. Okay, let's start the comic. So look at this beautiful Frank Brunner. It's all Frank Brunner. Oh, I'm sorry, it's not all Frank Brunner. It's inked by Steve Leialoha, one of the great inkers on Howard the Duck. And, of course, other things like Warlock, Jim Starlin. And pretty soon, though, we're going to see Steve Leialoha solo, unleashed. And it's fucking beautiful. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So here's the Duccaneer. And we see this cartoonist burning the midnight oil. He's drawing a comic called the Duccaneer. That's just such nice inking from Leialoha. I mean, great art. Frank Brunner's so good at drawing ducks. The funny animal style duck. We see this cartoonist. I think his name's like Dexter. And he goes to the big time comic company. That's actually what it's called. His boss kind of looks like Uncle Scrooge. And his editor. And he seems like a, tyrant type editor like Mort Weisinger or something. He basically berates Dexter for making a pirate comic. Especially considering that it has a human female in it, which he calls an ape. Nobody can relate to apes, he says. He gives him a paltry sum, much less than they agreed on, and just says, maybe I'll use it as a backup. He's basically just a chiseling, shitty editor. He goes home, and his dad's there, and his dad always berates him about not having a real job. It turns out his girlfriend is totally... basically is ditching him. Actually, I don't even know if she's the girlfriend. I think he just tried to get a date with her. And she basically gives him the heave-ho. So he's really bummed. He's sitting at his desk drawing, his table, and all of a sudden he gets groggy. I like these little stars here showing that he's getting drowsy. And he kind of almost feels like he's going through a dimensional portal. So he's probably just falling asleep. And he wakes up, or not wakes up, but he lands on this pirate ship. And this is the pirate ship run by Captain Bloodbath. And he's your very, typical evil pirate, like Bluebeard. And he's already dressed up in, like, sailor clothes. So everyone just assumes he's part of the crew. He sees this plug. He stumbles on it. He says, what the hell is this thing doing here? And then this woman shows up. This is Kitty. So this is like the Beverly Switzer of the comic. And she says, you better not pull that. That's the ship's plug. Which, do ships have this? I can't imagine they would. An easy way to sink the ship. I don't know where this whole concept of the ship's plug came in. Man, he draws a just very sexy Kitty. She's just beautiful. And also that Lealoha line work is just really gorgeous. The combination of these two is really nice. So she befriends him, and she tells him that she was a slave. I'm sorry, they kidnapped her, but the ransom never came through, so they just said, hey, you want to join the crew? And then all of a sudden, this other pirate ship shows up, Captain Slash, which is Captain Bloodbath's arch enemy. So they're going to basically have a showdown to see who's the best buccaneer on the sea. And they start fighting with cannonball. And then the grappling hooks start flying, and they're fighting man to man. It's a total carnage. And Kitty is already seems to be very protective of Dexter. She says, you go hide. I know you can't fight. And she's just kicking ass, killing all these bad guys. Well, I guess they're all bad guys. They're all pirates. And they win the fight. Bloodbath's crew win against Slash's crew. One of the Slash's crew, though, he's not quite dead. He's got a gun in his hand, and he's aiming it at Bloodbath. So Dexter figures he'll gain points by shooting him and, saving the day. But his bullet ricochets, and it hits Captain Bloodbath. When he turns around, the guy dies right then. So all he sees is Dexter with a gun. He's like, you son of a bitch. And basically, Kitty tries to defend him. She says, oh, I'm sure it was an accident. And I guess Dexter runs down deck. And when they're down there, Bloodbath unleashes the cork, this ship's cork, and knocks him right onto Dexter's knife. Dexter didn't even, she was like, I didn't mean to do it. But Kitty's like, this is great. Now you're the captain. And then, just like Howard the Duck in those black and white comics later on, it's kind of implied that they do go to bed in the same bed, but it's almost implied that they have sex. This little duck and this woman. It just looks exactly like Howard the Duck. But that's the thing. I wonder, can you copyright that? Someone's style? I guess, I'm sure Marvel Comics has sued people for that kind of stuff. So the next morning, I guess the crew sobered up after their partying. And they're like, we're not going to follow a fucking duck for a captain. And definitely not a woman. So they make him walk the plank. Dexter feels himself sinking, which he thinks is weird because he's a duck who shouldn't sink. And then he wakes up. It was all a dream. His father has thrown a pail of water on him to wake him up. Kind of goofy, but, man, really nice art. I love this kind of stuff. Frame Finder, definitely there's some clunky faces here and there, but I just love his style. I love his Doctor Stranges, man. If you guys never saw those, that's some really great stuff. So here we go. We just looked at Michael T. Gilbert's Strange Brew collection a month or two ago, and it featured a new Wraith story, and this is the very first Wraith story, back in 1976. The Wraith is all about basically being a copy of the Spirit, or a funny animal parody of the Spirit. And so there's so much Will Eisner in this. Michael T. Gilbert was a huge fan, and this whole comic is almost like a tribute to Will Eisner. Of course, we start off with the logo being part of the scenery, but it's just a bunch of laundry. And we see the wraith lurking here, looking all spooky. And we see this woman who would later find out is a prostitute. And she's running from these bad guys. It takes place in Slum City. I guess that's where the wraith's adventures take place. And look at this, like the sound effects, click, clack, click, clack, click, clack, as the guys get closer. So Eisner. I'm surprised it's not raining. And we meet this crew. And, God, I love these funny animals, these caricatured creatures. So I guess this guy's named Solly. He's like the pimp. And he's all dressed, he's all pimped out. I love his costume here. And he's got this like gang of monkeys of various types of apes and simians. Kind of interesting that the prostitute's name is Kitty in this, right after the first story where the woman's name was Kitty. And so I guess she was trying to escape. She's a prostitute in Solly's stable. And so I guess they're going to rough her up to teach her a lesson. But then the wraith shows up. I like this how they're all different lettering styles. The wraith, the wraith. And Solly says, get him. And just like the spirit, the wraith gets his ass kicked a lot. You know, he can take a lot of punishment. And so this giant, God, what is that kind of, is that a mandrill? I don't know. He's like his punches have no effect on him, so he kicks him in the nuts. It's so amazing. This is one of those comics where when I reread it last night, just so many panels like are burned into my memory. Certain things here and there, because I must have reread this comic, I don't know, once every 2 weeks growing up. Here's all the monkey guys. I love the wraith. I think I was just talking about that a couple weeks ago, how there's not enough funny animal dogs. There's plenty of rats and mice and cats and ducks, obviously. But where are the funny animal dog characters? This is Huckleberry Hound, I guess. And so now the guys all team up on the wraith, and he gets his ass beat, or it looks like it at first. There's just some, like, this is a young Michael T. Gilbert. You can tell his lettering's, the one flaw in here is the lettering's not quite there. It's not horrible, but it's not the best lettering. But it's a little off. But his storytelling, his use of, like, sipatone and shading, he really, like, is a cartoonist, like, he's not dicking around. He learned his craft. And then the big joke is that he's got a bazooka, which I guess he somehow carries on him without nobody knowing. And so after he takes care of the henchman, he goes to Solly. He's in a threatening manner, and Solly has a heart attack. Look at these three little Eisner-like panels. The quick depiction of time. And so then he, the last few panels are kind of funny, where he's like, okay, you can't, you're not going to be a prostitute anymore, so we have to get you a job. And they're looking in the paper, and basically it sounds like Kitty's just like, nah, I'm going back to being a sex worker. Nothing sounds good. Next we have the inedible exploits of Uwal Gibbon, the junk food monkey, and the burger god of Humbuga Tagoa. And this is all Scott Shaw. And I've shown off Scott Shaw before. I talked about him. I love his cartooning. Just very simple, funny cartooning. I think he's great. Great lettering. Well, he didn't do that. There's another letterer. And so Uwal Gibbon, his whole thing is, there was a guy in the 70s named Uwal Gibbons. I guess he was a health food guru, and he even did commercials for, like, I think grape nuts, shredded wheat. Like, if people would listen to him if he said, oh, this food's healthy. So this is like his parody, Uwal Gibbon, who just eats junk food. So he's in his favorite fast food chain, Mac's Big Boy in a Box. He orders a Bambasto burger. He's shocked to find that there's actually a piece of real meat in it. So he goes to complain to the manager. And while he's doing that, he kind of gives his origin story. So he grew up in a zoo on a diet of nothing but junk food, and he loved it. And what turned out that happened is he now has an allergy to any real food. All he can eat is shitty processed junk food. So from talking to the manager, he finds out that the Mr. Grab Grease, he's the head of this whole burger chain. He's like Ray Kroc. He disappeared in Africa. Apparently he was searching for something. So Ewald Gibbons vows to go to Africa and return with him. Meanwhile, he meets this guy, Graham Crackers, this horse guy. And he's a galloping gourmet. He has his own TV show. And he basically figures out what Ewald Gibbons up to. And he figures, if Ewald Gibbons going to Africa, I bet this has something to do with that missing burger baron. And he's probably, I'm going to tail him and see what he's up to. So Ewald Gibbons goes out to the jungle, starts sinking in quicksand. And these natives find him. They take him back to their village, and it turns out Mac Grabgrease is there. They think he's like the son of their god. And he's kind of like the king of the village now. He also found that Crackers guy, and he's got him locked up in a cage. So the reason why Grabgrease is there, he tells a little story, is that he heard about this tribe who had the most delicious recipe for hamburgers, and which had no meat in them somehow. So he figured he could have a very profitable recipe for his burger chain. So Ewald Gibbon escapes, and that night he enters into the stone idol, their god. It's got, obviously it's like a parody of Bob's Big Boy. I love that there's a big boy statue in the middle of Africa. He goes inside. The next morning, he basically is in the head of this idol. And he says, that guy isn't my son. He's a liar. You should tie him up and listen to that nice Gibbon feller. So he wins the day. They tie up Grabgrease, and Ewald Gibbons heads back to civilization. What was the one thing I wanted to point out in the first page, where they show the little preview panel of him sinking in quicksand. And he's like, help! And in parentheses, by the way, folks, did y'all know that quicksand makes it a natural and delicious breakfast? Crunchy as hell, too. So it's almost like Ewald Gibbon is reverting to Ewald Gibbons. Because he'd always be eating like seeds and just nasty stuff, because it's so healthy. That was Ewald Gibbons' modus operandi. Here we have a couple of Easy Wolf one-pagers by Ted Richards. We've talked about Ted Richards before on this channel. I love his cartooning. I love his art style. He's just not that funny ever. I don't think he's that funny. I mean, it's cute. This is a cute strip. And it's basically Easy Wolf. It just takes place in like the Ozarks. It's kind of like hillbilly humor. And, they're just gags. This one's I would totally remember from being a kid, where I guess they let this one crazy guy out of the asylum early. So the sheriff and his deputy, hey, what you doing there? His name's Vincent Van Hogg. So he's painting. And they're like, what's that smell? And he tells them that he made organic paints out of his own feces. And he goes to the bush to replenish it. He's just painting with shit. And the sheriff calls the loony bin to come grab him away. And the deputy says, what should I do with the painting? Flush it. Okay, that one's kind of funny, I think. But man, I love his cartooning. I love this art style so much. So here we have On the Skids. This was a really perplexing comic to me as a kid, because it's definitely very adult. And it's basically Howard Chaykin writing, and everything else is done by Alan Cooperberg. Alan Cooperberg, you might know him from Obnoxio the Clown. That was his crowning achievement in comics. And so I assume that this is kind of like autobiographical. Like Howard was friends with Alan, and they would, partake of the nightlife of New York City back in the day, back in the 70s. Must have been fun as fuck back then with discos and cocaine everywhere and, pre-AIDS. And it's just totally making fun of, like, I don't know, hip culture. When they walk into this bar, you see all these just little balloons. Everyone's just saying the same cliches. Quiana, Slow Southern Screw, Ben Weldon, Geraldo Rivera. I gotta be honest, most of these I don't even know what the references. It's like I wasn't an adult in the 70s. I guess I could look them up. And these guys are basically just on the make. They're just like typical 70s, two wild and crazy guys trying to get laid. They're a little too clever for their own good. And they're just hitting on women and basically belittling everyone they meet. They kind of think that, everyone they meet is kind of a chucklehead, which if you go to bars, it's not far from the truth. If you hang out in the bars, there's definitely a lot of dopes hanging around. So they decided to go to Manhattan. They were in Queens earlier. They figure, we'll go to the real, where the culture really is. And when they walk in the bar, it's the same shit. Almost every balloon's the same. I like all the cameos in here. Look at this Bugs Bunny chick. Snoopy is the waiter here. There's just lots of them. Let me see if I missed some. I guess that looks like Magilla Gorilla. Oh, there's, what's his face? I can't remember his name. Snagglepuss? Yogi Bear's in the background here. I kind of like this art by Alan Cooperberg. Alan Cooperberg did a lot of straight Marvel comics. Not many, because you could tell that he wasn't very good, and they knew it. They never really gave him a title. They'd always do a backup, probably because someone was late. And they're like, Alan will do it. But he's much better as a funny animal cartoonist. This is all pretty good looking. I like this little Wally Wood shout out here. That's that character he used to always draw. So this seemed so cosmopolitan and sophisticated to me when I was a kid. I was just like, whoa, I'll never be this cool. And I didn't even know what they were talking about. I was so young. I was just like, but I knew that they were like, wow, these guys know a lot about the world. They're very worldly. So now I think they're at another bar here. Of course, everyone's saying the same shit. And the whole time, they're just spinning one-liners at each other. I mean, it's like, a sitcom. And then they decide, they never score with any of the chicks. So they decide to go to a diner, and they decide to go home. And when they get in their taxi, they take off their masks, and they say, and Howard Chaykin says, I know where we got the mask, but where do we get these cute little gloves? Because they got the funny animal gloves that all funny animals seem to wear. Yeah, I mean, I don't really, there's so much of this I don't even understand as a 57-year-old man, because I never lived like this. I mean, the kind of bars where these guys were going to, I would just feel so out of place. I never really went to bars like that. I'd go to little, see punk rock bands in bars and go to dive bars. So it still is like I don't quite understand this world that they're depicting. I definitely would want to read more, though, because it is like a glimpse into some other world. Here we have Duckula, and here's another Scott Shaw strip. And this is such a bad joke. I'm not even going to recount it to you, but I love the cartooning. Just nice, cute, perfect cartooning. This next one's kind of interesting. It's Cosmo Cat in the case of the Purloined periodicals. And Mark Evanier story, Scott Shaw, layout and character design, and Dave Stevens, pencils and inks, the Rocketeer creator. He must have been so young in 1976. He was probably like Russ Manning's assistant then. That's how he started. And you can't really see the Dave Stevens in this. Maybe you can, I can. It's not much, but it does look sharp as hell. And so Cosmo Cat is a typical, like, science fiction character, kind of that sci-fi noir. He's like a kind of private detective. And we see this antique dealer. These two pig-like guys are in his place, and they kill him and take something. Cosmo Cat gets the call. He's working for an insurance company. They want him to investigate what the hell's going on. So he meets this guy, what's his name? Vanderbilt, this dog guy. And I guess he reported that one of his TV guides was stolen. I guess in the future, TV guides are like this amazing, rare piece of art almost. I like this how the police officer on the scene says, "Let me see your card. Cosmo W. Cat. Personal investigations." What does the W stand for? Ralph. My parents learned English from Elmer Fudd cartoons. That was pretty funny. And so basically, I'm not going to get into every twist and turn, but, it's this elaborate thing, like a noir story, like a detective story. And Cosmo Cat's trying to figure out what's going on. The whole universe is populated by these funny animals. And he meets this one artist, Mr. Della Zebra, who I guess is a great artist, but he went to jail for being a counterfeiter. He was such a good artist, he could counterfeit things. And he counterfeited TV guides, which I don't care if you're the best painter in the world. I don't see how you could do that. So basically, it turns out there's some kind of scam going on between the zebra and Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt lied about his TV guides being stolen. He just wanted the insurance money. And Cosmo Cat gets to the bottom of it. So I don't know if you can see the Dave Stevens in here. I think there was one panel, where I could almost be like, oh yeah, I could see that, Dave Stevens. Oh, you know what it was? Of course. I forgot. It's this chick. This kitty lady. Look at that va-va-voom body. That's Dave Stevens for you. He liked the pulchritude. And, there's a little action. And Vanderbilt and his flunkies, they meet their justice at the hands of Cosmo Cat. I do like it. It's one of those comics where they've set up everything. And then Cosmo Cat says, I figured it out. And then the narrator says, okay, reader, your turn. Before you turn the page, can you figure out? All the clues have been laid out for you. Which I never could do those. I guess I'm a dummy. I remember certain comics would do that, and I'd be like, I have no fucking clue. So we find out about how Vanderbilt, was trying to bilk the insurance company. I like how he tries to kill Cosmo Cat with a gun, but it's an antique gun, so it just crumbles. And that's the end. We have a little back cover of those on the Skids characters, drawn by Alan Cooperberg. I believe these are panels just from the comic inside. But this is new art here. These guys are kind of cute. These little raccoon guys. But there you go, guys. Quack number 1. I know it's not that great, but it's very important to me to my inner child. There's 6 of these, so over the next couple weeks, 3 weeks, we'll be looking at all 6 of them. And I hope you guys like looking at this. I hope you like this comic. It's definitely something that you'd appreciate more if you were a little kid. But I still kind of like it. It's just the cartooning and almost all the stories is really nice and sharp. But especially, I love the Duccaneer. So I guess that's it for today's video. Well, tonight's video. It's 2:30 in the morning. I just got off work at my karaoke job. And once again, I'm drunk. But I'm not as drunk as last time. Apparently, one of our viewers said that I sounded like it was at half speed. That's how drunk I was. But I think I'm not. I hopefully don't sound that bad tonight. And I hope to see you next time here at the Herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.